What's up, Junkies? Long time no speak. Welcome back in for another year and another edition of Pigskin Junkies. As you know, it is myself, Michael Larson, the big brother, Jared Larson.
Woo!
Getting back into the roots here of the college pigskin. So, Jared and I obviously been taking a little hiatus. Jared, would you like to, give a rundown, of kind of how the show is going to look, or what our layout's going to be moving forward?
Big Cat, I am juiced to be back. Big Cat posted on Twitter this video of Steve Ballmer.
I was like I'm not Big Cat.
So fired up to be. I mean, I guess if I'm Steve Ballmer and I own the Clippers and I'm a billionaire, I'd just be fired up too. But he was so riled up when they signed Kawhi and they had the press conference and everything. And it's him just clapping it whoa! Mm-hmm. I am so stoked to be here. And as am I. So anyways, here's how the show is going to go this year. In terms of hashtag content output, we're actually going to have two separate shows, one for college with Micah and myself, and then one with Scott with all three of us as well, just because schedules are starting to get a little bit more complicated. There's three little babies running around and three wives as well. So trying to time all that up, and we want to make sure that we're getting something consistent out to you guys both on Mondays and then on Fridays and Saturdays. So you can expect, as you can imagine, the college stuff will be coming on Fridays and then the NFL stuff probably on Saturdays. As you know, our brand is to keep it right around 30 minutes. Hopefully this is something you guys can get to or from work or whatever. I'm finding out as an old man now doing more podcasts, doing stupid stuff like washing the dishes. So that will be
You've given up on the music.
Yeah, it'll all come from the same feed. But just know that we'll have both college and NFL shows separately. Well, I should say preview shows. The recap will kind of be all in one and maybe be a little bit longer.
Yeah. And when Jared says three babies running around, he's not referring to the three of us on the podcast. Actual little humans.
Three other humans.
So, as for those of you who...
Four if you include Micah.
Yeah, sick burn. For those of you who have been following the podcast, a.k.a. the 10 of you, from the very beginning, we like to do a college football breakdown, kind of go conference by conference. This year, we're going to even break it down a little bit more, go into just a podcast per conference for Power 5. We don't talk about... we'll talk about the other guys, but basically...
Nobody cares, and nobody listens.
Outside of those 5 conferences, we'll talk UCF and Notre Dame somewhere. And
UCF, really suck.
That's all that matters.
The end.
Okay. So we're going to dive into the Pac12 here. We're going to start on the far west and work our way east because, as you all know, we like to end with the SEC. However, it's going to be a tough challenge today as one of the teams we will be talking about is the Oregon Ducks, who start their season against the Auburn Tigers in Jerry World. So, Pac-12, just a little recap from last year, the 2018 final standings. We had Utah taking on the Washington Huskies in the Pac-12 championship game. Yeah, it was not a really good year. Utah having a 6-3 record in conference, and Washington with a 7-2 record in conference. Cougars and Mike Leach just missing out, and if they would have won the Apple Cup, they could have been in. But that just seems to be what always happens with Leach.
I was going to say, they can't ever win that game.
Yeah. Leaving on the grass, came in second place as well in the South. USC having their first losing season since 2000. So lots of weird things going on in the Pac-12. I will say this, before we dive into the teams, what did you think about the proposal for them to start games at 9 a.m. so that they would kick off at noon?
Awful. Nobody wants to do that.
I would go to another college. If I lived out there, I wouldn't go so that...
Wouldn't go to school there because the football game started at 9. We both went to Auburn, so I feel like that's a totally... 11 a.m. games at Auburn, people are like, shh, I'm not going to that crap. 11 a.m. I will say, as an older parent now, earlier games are more appealing to me, but 9 a.m., even as an adult, is way too soon. Because that means I'm drinking liquor whiskey at 7:15. which is just
is that
weird.
frowned upon in most establishments?
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about like how shitty the environment will be at 9 o'clock in the morning.
College kids just went to bed 4 hours ago.
Yeah, or it could be extra lit because they just push through. Start
rally.
tailgating at like 4 a.m. straight from the bar to the amphitheater, in the dark.
That'd be horrible. Oh boy,
terrible idea. It's a horrible idea. I think even that when you look at the primetime slots, 3:30 Easterns, they already have enough games at like 12:30. So I understand that the West Coast people typically migrate their day to, or I shouldn't say typically, a lot of West Coast people migrate their day to the East Coast time. This is not one of those things that should be adapted.
So the breakdown.
Adopted, rather.
Yeah. I was picking up what you're laying down.
Shaking the rust off here.
The breakdown of conferences, so obviously North and South, this year projected Utah to win the South and then Oregon in the North, which I don't think is much as a surprise to anybody, especially with the Utes being the way they are. So that's going to start us out. So we're going to go in the South first. We're going to start off with the favorite, the Utah Utes, bringing back 7 offensive starters, 7 defensive starters, running back Zach Moss, and quarterback Tyler Huntley going to be obviously the main.
Senior.
I know. I always want to say senior when I see these things. Yeah.
Junior. What is Tyler Huntley so?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, the first year Jared and I did this, as we were looking at these rosters, they have in the same font senior and junior, which most of the time are the starters and are also names for that you can have at the end of your proper names. So we went through. I think there were a lot of parents. In the first year we went through all this, there were a lot of parents. So obviously, the Utes, I don't think, had the season they wanted to last year, finishing 9-5, had a lot of promise. Everyone was super juiced with Zach Moss and Huntley at those positions. Had some big primetime games and kind of fell flat, which is rare for Utah, I would say. They're usually a great primetime performer. Opening the year Thursday night, August 29th, against their in-state rival BYU, the Cougars, at USC, at Oregon State, at Washington, at Arizona. They're big road games. I mean, they're only road games. So, Jared, what do you think about these guys coming into it?
Yeah, I liked them a lot, actually. Before I actually started reading the Phil Steele magazine, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a pretty good team. And then I opened it up, and it said, he's high on them, which I'm just like, they draw pretty well out of the North this year. They have at Washington, obviously, which is not ideal, and then they get Washington State at home. So they dodge Oregon out of the North, which is, of course, the favorite in that division. But you had a team that went 9-5 last year. The defense is fantastic and is expected to be again this year. On top of that, Zach Moss and Tyler Huntley missed 5 games, I think, last year, maybe 4. Including that Pac-12 championship, which was, 9-6 final, 15-6 or some garbage like that. I watched the whole thing because I had a Utah conference title future. Don't really like the price this year to win the conference. I do expect them to be in the game out of the South because this division just can't seem to get it together.
10-3 final.
10-3, that's what it was. I knew it was something ugly. Salt Lake Silly, a lot of Samoans on this team on the defensive line, which is a brand of human that I love playing that position. And you got a lot of skilled players back on offense, and I expect them to be able to move the ball much better than what they did last year with the injury bug. So it's very cliche to say, but if they can stay clean on the injury report, I think they're a deserving favorite in the South.
I agree. Returning 4 first-team All-Pac-12 players from last year, and 3 of those being on the defensive side of the ball and 2 of them being on the D-line. I think if you look at the strengths of this football team, you have a great defensive line, which I think is top 5 in the country, and a secondary who is very good and experienced. So you put those 2 things together, a good secondary, you're either going to get coverage sacks or you have a good defensive line and you're just going to get good pressure sacks to make your secondary look good. So if you have those two things, obviously, where they're both strengths, it should be pretty good for them. Now, I will say, usually a Kyle Whittingham coach team has a very good special teams, but Jared, I don't know if you saw this, they are not returning their kicker and their punter for this following year. I think they'll be fine, but that's one of those things in college football that can easily change the momentum of the game, especially when you have a defense like they do where you can choose to punt the ball with an experienced punter, pin him in deep, and really just play defense and get the ball back and stay on that side of the field the whole time. I think this Utah team will be a fun brand of football to watch. They usually are very exciting. A more explosive offense, but with a more old-school smash-mouth defense combination should be real fun. I like these guys to win the Pac-12 overall.
Kyle Whittingham has been there for 15 years.
Yeah,
that made me feel really old.
Yeah, I mean, that's how long ago Urban left there. That means Alex Smith has been out for 15 years as well.
I know. It's crazy.
Crazy to think about. Next team. Get
a new fight song, guys.
The Auburn grad, Clay Helton, coming to the helm for his, what is this? This is not his 5th year, is it?
5th year. I know.
Holy
I was going through these coaches. I'm like, man, we are old. I've been out of school for a lot longer than I think.
Steve Sarkisian feels like he was drinking in the locker room yesterday. This is unbelievable.
Like last week.
Yeah. So
he's so bad. He's the reason they're in the toilet bowl, in my opinion. But anyways, continue.
It's been Kiffin, then him. It's just been a roller coaster. This team, I think, struggled to have an identity last year. So going 5-7, as I mentioned before. First losing season since 2000, and then we all know what happened after that season. USC kind of rejuvenated the brand. Opening against Fresno State August 31st, I think that is a very tough opener. A non-conference team that can score points and give you a run for your money. Home against against Utah on a Friday. They have at BYU for another out of conference, at Washington, at Notre Dame, at Colorado's not a big deal, at Leaving on the Grass, who's coming off of a bye, and at Cal. And we'll talk about that UCLA game later because we won't talk about them. Anywho, Fresno State is one of those I think you can circle on the calendar early, and I love the November 9th, Arizona State coming off of a bye. Ooh. Joe, what do you think about these Trojans?
So brutal schedule. And then non-conference, as Micah mentioned, they have to go to Notre Dame and then Fresno State, which is no slouch, and then at a pretty good BYU team. They get Stanford, Washington, and Oregon out of the North. So they get the top 3 schools out of the North. JT Daniels, sorry. Year number 2. That was like a guy that I had on NCAA like 04 was JT McDaniels. Anyways.
When you randomly generated names?
Yeah, like random generated. These guys are loaded with talent on the outsides of the field. Corners, wide receivers would probably be ton of fun to watch them do like a 7-on-7. Conversely, a lot of turnover in the trenches, which always gives me reason for pause. Are they going to be better with a non-freshman quarterback who's actually got his head screwed on a little bit? Sure. I'm not seeing the hype here for some of these, South challenging Utah or anyone else for that matter. I think they are going to out-talent everyone in this division, which means they'll probably be in the mix come November. But I really just don't see a clear path for them to Santa Clara and the Pac-12 title game.
I agree. This team of the Pac-12 schedules I've seen, I think, has the toughest draw. And they got the big brand, and this team will have the most pressure on them out of any team because obviously a lot of people thinking Helton was going to be fired last year were surprised that he kept his job. The offense, like Jared said, is going to be a lot of fun to watch. This is going to be like an air raid, Colt Brennan type offense where you're going to have potentially 4 NFL talent wide receivers on the field and a now 19-year-old JT Daniels hoping to go out there and which this should have been his freshman year of college.
Yeah.
So the experience there, another year getting stronger. and getting in the playbook. His new playbook will be good. The spring game, a lot of people I think were hyped about. I haven't watched it, but apparently these, like Jared was saying, the talent on the outside, as to be expected for USC, is the talent positions are always loaded. So that is for the Trojans. I think the Utes still come out of this one. That'll be a Friday night game, though, at the Coliseum, which will be a fun one to watch, September 20th.
Not in Salt Lake City.
Not in Salt Lake City. Next up, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. In his second year, Herm Edwards and the Arizona State Sun Devils. Don't say no Sun Devils around my boy Herm Edwards. He doesn't like it. Does not like that word. So, Sun Devils in the first year under Herm Edwards going with a nice 7-6 record, returning 8 players on the offensive side of the ball, 7 on defense. The big road games, I guess, for their out-of-conference, you could definitely say at Michigan State, at Utah, at UCLA, at Oregon State. But those 2 last ones aren't.
You keep saying UCLA like they're actually good.
I keep thinking that they can be because they have a head coach that was good 10 years ago.
I was going to say, who hasn't won any games in like 7 years.
Just leave me alone, okay? I'll let you go, Jared. Let's hear it. Leave it on the grass.
So you mentioned this is Micah's squad. You mentioned 8 starters back on offense. That's a little bit misleading because they do lose their quarterback. I believe the guy is actually the all-time leading passer at Arizona State. And then first-round draft pick N'Keal Harry went to the Patriots. So they lost, despite the fact that they returned 8 of the 11, 2 of those 3 were pretty big dudes in terms of the output. But there's actually quite a bit of talent coming back at the quarterback position. 3 freshmen actually coming in, pretty highly touted. Hearn obviously doing work, getting those guys in there. Eno Benjamin back after a big year last year. And 78 starts back on the offensive line. So I think this is a team that's going to be able to get it up and down, spin it around a little bit. And not surprisingly, a defense that's consistently improved, not only from 2017, but to 18, and then should be expected to improve this year under a defensive-minded head coach in Herm Edwards. So I like these guys a lot. Candidly, if anyone's going to challenge in the South, it's going to be them. The problem is they have to go to Utah, which I think will be a massive linchpin game in terms of the way that the conference breaks down. Mm-hmm. Well, rather the division breaks down.
Herm always covers. Next team, UCLA Bruins. Chip Kelly going 3-9 in his first year with the team. That'll be his second year. Obviously, I can do math. Taking over for the Bruins. I don't have much on these guys. I think this is a massive rebuild for UCLA. They're trying to get these coaches. They have to just take out all the junk and then totally rebuild because UCLA hasn't had an identity.
To the studs.
Yeah, this UCLA program has been underachieving and horrendous for a while now, and it's going to take a little bit of. It's going to hurt before it gets better.
Yeah, you got to take it all the way to the stud. So their schedule is pretty brutal. They got 5 Pac-12 road games. They do dodge Oregon and Washington out of the north, but their non-conference includes at Cincinnati to open the season, San Diego State, which certainly is not a pushover, and a lot of kids probably recruited from that same area, wishing they'd have been recruited by UCLA, and then Oklahoma at home, which I fully anticipate they will get boat raced out of the Rose Bowl. QB, so this team is just really not very good. Mm-hmm. I didn't think Wilson Speight fit at all for them last year. It just did not make sense for a Chip Kelly offense. You're going to put a guy who's in a wheelchair back there to try and run an offense. Dorian Thompson-Robinson got inserted, and you saw a little bit of a spark. He got hurt, and really it was fits and starts towards the back half of that last year. They went from 58% pass in year 1 to 47% in Chip's, well, I should say year 0 to 47 in Chip's year 1. So I would expect to see a lot of running of the ball this year, and they do have 19 starters back. So Improvement off the mat of 3-9 probably isn't shocking to anyone, but I don't see them winning a whole lot more than 4 or 5 games given the schedule that they have and the fact that they're just playing a lot of young guys.
Mm-hmm. So, next up in his second year as well, Kevin Sumlin and the Arizona Wildcats.
The rock star.
Hard to believe already it's Khalil Tate's senior season. Really fun to watch J.J. Taylor play. Those two are a pretty explosive duo in the backfield, but does Kevin Sumlin have the ability to win big games?
No. Short answer is no.
Open it up at Hawaii.
Kevin's going on vacation is what that's what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if you look last year, I almost said Golden Tate, like I'm losing my stinking mind over here.
There's talking Notre Dame. There's talking Notre Dame right there.
Didn't he get traded? I don't know. I'm reading so much these days it all just blurs together. So Khalil Tate actually had his rush attempts cut in half last year. I know he dealt a little bit with an ankle, but when you watch a guy like him do something in 2017 that nobody does, and then Kevin Sumlin shows up and he doesn't run anymore, that's coaching. Got to know how to coach. He was good in whatever the AAC or whatever that trash conference that Houston was in, Big East. I don't even remember when he was in there. Went to A&M, never really did anything. Not a good coach. They do have 4 guys back on the offensive line. So here's the deal. Run the ball, and then just pray that you can improve on defense. Can't get much worse than last year. So this team's going to hover around mediocrity because their coach stinks. Whether they win 4, 5, 6, or 7 games, to me, who knows, but they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Well,
nowhere fast.
Arizona's always a fun game to just put on while you fall asleep late at night, or if you're just low on money, just bet the over and just and hope.
Bear down after dark.
Yeah.
Wait for David Hasselhoff to show up in the student section.
So, baby, pull me closer in the backseat of your Rover. We're going to Boulder.
Wow, you're going deep there.
Oh, yeah. I'm going back 2 years to Chainsmokers songs. Oh, I'm telling you, being in college when that song came out might have been the worst thing that ever happened because everywhere you went, that song was playing. Mel Tucker taking on the head coaching job in Boulder. The Buffs just have not been able to figure it out since, 2003?
Yeah, I feel like this is where pretty good coaches just go to die.
Well, this is so go ahead.
I actually think McIntyre was a pretty good coach, and they just can't get kids to go there, which is odd because Denver as a city is growing significantly, and they have quite a bit more recruiting ability. I don't quite know why they're so bad. I can't put it together. Mm-hmm. There's systemic issues. I don't think Mel Tucker's the answer, but who knows?
We'll see.
I mean, they were in the Pac-12 title game, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, so that'll be fun to watch. This Laviska Chenault kid and Steven Montez are going to spin it around, and they'll score some points. But the defense, massive question marks really at every position. Mm-hmm. They play Nebraska in the non-conference, a team that I'm pretty high on this year. And then brutal non-conference. They draw the best 4 out of the North. So they play Stanford, Washington, Washington State, and Oregon, 2 of those games being on the road. So tough draw for them this year. And first-year coach, I think, who needs to try and establish an identity. We'll see what that identity is. Mm-hmm. But, I'm cellar dweller as far as I'm concerned.
I'm juiced for the Nebraska game. That's the game that when you turn on ESPN Classic, they always have one of those.
Yeah, Cordell with the Cordell Stewart.
Yeah, late 90s Colorado, Nebraska.
Just some elite games in there.
Beat down, just black and blue, old school football right there. I do miss that Big 12 when they were there. Next, we're going to move to the north. The Quack Attack, Ducks going natty, pretty cool. So
never gets old.
No, it really doesn't. So Jared and I say that to each other quite
often. Some stoner
in
a beanie like a barista is who they interview when they're going to the national championship. Like, this guy gives two shits. Like, hey, man, just tip me when I fill up your macchiato today.
Jeez. So Mario Cristobal coming into his second year. If only Willie Taggart would have stayed there, then I wouldn't be that worried about this game. That idiot. Sorry, FSU fans. So Justin Herbert staying.
Willie.
Justin staying for his senior season, which I think threw a lot of people off. A lot of people think he would have been the first quarterback off the board in this year's draft.
Number 1 overall, dude. Stupid.
Mm-hmm. Gonna come back. Rock for the Ducks.
What are you trying to achieve, dude?
Overall strength of schedule is number 45 in the country. So outside of Auburn, really not any tough challenges for the Ducks. At Washington, at USC, at Arizona State, at Stanford, I don't think anyone's worried about Stanford anymore. That ship has kind of sailed. No. Can't score points.
Just wait.
Can't score points. So
okay, we'll see.
Returning 10 starters offensively, 7 defensively. 9-4 last year. Obviously missed out on the Pac-12 championship game. And that's kind of all the recap for the Ducks from 2018. Jerry, what do you think about this team going into next year?
Yeah, I mean, Herbert will be fun to watch, and they're going to spin it and score some points. So this is going to be like Chip Kelly, Oregon of old, where they're scoring potentially 50 points a game. And they got some G's on this team. Like, I was watching the press conference with Mario Cristobal, which is like so funny because he's such a Miami dude, and then he's like plugged into Eugene, Oregon. It's just not, I don't know, doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
To me. So they're going to be fun to watch. I will be watching quite a few of their games, including their first one in person. But I just think we match up with them. I mean, we can cover this, I guess, in the week 1 preview. I think we match up with them very well. I think this is a historically soft Pac-12 defense that will be able to not stop anyone outside of those in their own conference, and they're going to score 1 million points, and they're going to win games 52-41, something like that. Couple tough games on the road. They got to go at Washington. I disagree with Micah. I think Stanford's going to be all right, and Stanford seems to be the bugaboo for Oregon. And then they got to go at SC, which we'll see where they stand at that point, whether or not Clay Helton's still the coach. So I think their number's 9.5. I will be betting them under, just because I think they're going to be so reliant. I mean, there's no doubt about it that Justin Herbert's the best quarterback in the country and would have been the number 1 overall draft pick. So he's a moron for coming back. But after that, I mean, I just don't. I think there's a lot of headline buzz with them, but I don't necessarily know that the guts of the team is good enough to win 10 games.
We'll talk about KJ Costello and the Stanford Cardinals in a little bit.
I'm a big KJ Costello guy.
Oof.
Big KJ Costello guy.
Ben Hogan 2.0. Washington Huskies.
A golfer.
I always said,
like Caddyshack. I want you to kill.
Was it Chris Hogan
on the golf course?
No. What was the
What are you
quarterback's
talking
name?
about? Chris Hogan? Yeah, I don't know. It definitely was Hogan.
Anyway, next up, the Huskies and the former number 1 overall quarterback, Jacob Eason, now taking the helm instead of Browning. This will be interesting. Bit of an underachieving season last year for the Washington Huskies, obviously losing to Auburn first game, subtle plug. And then underachieving is kind of a hard word for making the Pac-12 championship game and going to the Rose Bowl and playing pretty good against Ohio State. But
I was going to say they did go to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
I mean that's kind of the point.
That's
if you're
kind
in
of the
Pac-12.
main goal. Yeah. So 10-4. That's why I took it back. So only 2. But I mean, they had playoff hopes at the start of the season. This was a team that wanted to make the playoffs again. Browning was a senior, and they made it when he was a sophomore. And a lot of people were expecting a lot more out of this team, and they just didn't really take that next step to the elite status, per se.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So 10-4 on the year. Like I said, Jacob Eason taking over the helm at Washington, now into his junior season after starting as a freshman at Georgia. What do you think this Husky team can do?
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, I'm quite interested to see Eason play at quarterback it was kind of odd. Him coming out of high school, Seattle kid going to Georgia, looked like he was going to be the guy after Aaron Murray, and then that just for a myriad of reasons never materialized. Jake Browning, I feel like, was there for like 9 years and finally is leaving after this year. His ceiling to me was always very low. Also had a very high floor, but the type of guy that just doesn't make mistakes almost, which I don't know that that's the best qualities for a Chris Peterson quarterback. So I'm hoping that Eason will get in there and start slinging it a little bit more. Longtime listeners of the show that will know that I have a very high affinity for Chris Peterson. This is probably the worst roster he's had since he's been there, I think, for 5 years, sixth year, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I expect them to win 8-9 games, but that's really it, depending on where Eason comes in. But I think that's a large unknown, and the defense is a huge unknown, only with 2 guys back, I believe. Correct, 2 guys back. So, you're going to have to rebuild the whole thing. I trust Coach Pete to recruit, but and I'll tell you what, they've been getting some corners and like D-backs and stuff like that. But again, these kids are all 5 stars, and that's great, but get on the field and show me something, and then we'll start believing.
Yeah, that Huskies D was really good last year. And losing all that is going to, I think you'll see it a little earlier. Now, they don't have to open with a huge game. Like Jared was saying, Eastern Washington, who's no joke for a FCS or FCS team, but California, Hawaii.
Shouldn't lose that game.
No, you shouldn't. But those are 3 games you should be able to get your defense fine-tuned and ready to rock and roll. Next up, the Cardinal of Stanford, David Shaw, Jared's favorite head coach, entering his 9th year, which means holy smokes, Harbaugh's been gone for 9 years from there. It's just, I like how I always think of these teams in post really good coaches. the post after this, right after.
Yeah, it makes you feel old.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that guy who I actually loved watching at this place has been gone for that long.
Shoot, I was going to ask you, does Eason feel more like a Kellen Moore type quarterback? Right, was that it?
I haven't seen him play.
Yeah.
How many snaps did he play at Georgia? 15?
He started the whole season.
No, Aaron Murray. Aaron Murray started. That's why he transferred.
No,
not Aaron Murray.
No, Fromm.
Sorry.
But he played his whole
yeah.
freshman season.
False. Fromm came in.
No, they weren't. Eason was a sophomore when Fromm came in as a freshman.
So then where was Aaron Murray?
Wasn't Aaron Murray gone? I think we'll fact check that one later.
Hashtag facts.
I'll look
Fake
it up
news.
while Jared's giving his David Shaw Cardinal prediction here, just to make sure it's debate season. We'll get fact checkers on it. The Cardinal returning 4 starters offensively, 5 defensively, 9-4 record last year. Not a bad season. A couple games, Jared and I, as the season went on, we were talking about how they couldn't score points. But KJ Costello, who Jared is apparently huge on coming into his junior season, really, to me, the big thing with the Cardinals is, can Cameron Scarlett carry the ball and carry the Cardinals? Excuse me. Cardinal. So dumb.
Get it right.
Quit the singular.
When you're Stanford, you do what you want.
Tiger Woods went to school there. Congratulations, guys. Your mascot's a tree.
And Andrew Luck.
But the question is can Scarlett carry the load of this team? Because they're going to run the ball 50 times, and he's going to need to have good knees. Over to you.
Yeah, so this may be a hot take. I think it's more a system deal with the running backs at Stanford than it is anything else. Toby Gerhart, Christian McCaffrey, Bryce Love, the list goes on of dudes that just run. I mean, look, they run the ball 40 times a game. So these guys are going to put up these video game numbers because they just keep getting fed the rock. Now that runs, when we talk about the NFL stuff later about, what's these guys' shelf life in the NFL, it's a whole nother deal. And unfortunately for Bryce Love, you saw that shelf life start to deteriorate while he was actually still in school. So I have no doubt that they'll be able to run the ball, and KJ Costello loves throwing it to the tight ends that they just seem to continue to crank out. So my birthday, as some of you know, is September the 12th. Micah, do you know who the Stanford Cardinal play on Saturday, September 14th, and where they play.
Na, 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 na.
I don't know what that is.
That's a go. Anyway, that's a UCF fight song. Here in Central Florida at the Bounce House.
At the Bounce House. I may have to get some Stanford gear because we are going to be backing the truck up on that deal. UCF, this is how this works, guys. You have to play a real team. They're actually coming to you, which the athletic director is smoking crack all these deals about how these teams should come play us at the Bounce House. I'm like, you're a moron. They are going to get boat raced by KJ Costello, who's going to be dropping dimes all day. I cannot wait for that game.
It'll be
Other than that, they get all the good. So Oregon at home, they got to go at SC, which I already mentioned. Again, not a huge fan of that team this year. They get Oregon, Washington, and Notre Dame all at home. Do have to go to Pullman and the Crazy Scientist, which it's kind of a tough spot for them. But I like this team a lot this year. I think they can win 9 or 10 games.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke my piece earlier about this team. We'll see. Stanford's let me down in the past. We'll know their identity, I think, after 3 weeks.
What do they play? Northwestern first week at USC. I could easily see them being 1-2 after 3 weeks and then just running the schedule.
That's fair.
Because they do things like that.
The fact checkers are in. Micah was right. Easton started 13 games his freshman year. Threw 300.
What year was that?
2016. Threw for 2,430 yards, 16 touchdowns, 8 INTs.
2016.
I don't know.
Not watching Georgia.
Yeah. So, next up, my real favorite coach, the man, the legend, Mike Leach. And the
Guess
Cougars.
how many years he's been here?
I don't know, 8.
8.
8 years. What I'm looking forward to is not only Mike Leach, but watching Mighty Mouse coming in at 5'10", 195, Max Borghi, excuse me. I almost said Corgi, like the dog.
Max Borghi.
Is exciting. He's one of those tailbacks that I love when you have these huge linemen and they run the dive play, and I can hear the broadcasters. This is one of those tough plays for the linebackers because the running back just disappears in the pile and you don't know where he is. And you have an explosive lateral movements here out of Borghi. He can bounce one at any given time. So, keep your ears open for that one.
You can do the job. Micah can do the job.
And then this team's always just fun to watch. I always bet the over. It's in the words of Big Cat, life's too short to bet the under. So
on Washington State, yeah.
Yeah. So, although I think the 2 times I bet them last year, it didn't work out. But anywho, this team projected to finish 4th, I believe, in the North. Yes, 4th. Jared, what do you think?
I think that's what they were projected last year, 4th or maybe even 5th. Because at this time last year, nobody knew who Gardner Minshew was, and the Crazy Scientist just spins his little wheel and bloop, dude's an all-star.
The mustache.
So what's the name of the guy this year? Gage Gubrud. I don't even know who that person is. It says 2-time Peyton Award finalist in the FCS. Is this the guy from Eastern Washington?
Yes,
I don't even know.
Eastern Washington grad transfer.
So, I mean, look, Mike Leach has earned the respect that he can just put any quarterback on the field and make them fantastic. So at this point, I view this as disrespectful that they would be slotted for 4th in this division. Could they win 10 games? Yeah. Could they win 2? Sure. Defense isn't going to be able to stop anybody. It never has. We'll see if this grad kid is any good, and if not, so this will be. I will be paying very close attention to this team. Unfortunately, you won't get any real information until probably middle of September, because they play New Mexico State and Northern Colorado at home. But I'll be eyes peeled. September 28th at Utah, I think, will be a big yardage. What's the measuring stick game for this team? I'll be tuned in closely.
So last year, actually, in the past 4 years, so when Mike Leach first got on campus in 2014, they allowed 38.6 points per game. Well, it's gone down all 4 years, and the last year they improved it to 23.3, actually. But this year, computers are projecting it to go upward. So we'll see what happens there. But the defense actually has gotten better. But
it's not that hard to get better from allowing 38 points a game.
That's fair.
But yeah, 23. That's a respectable number. I'll give you that.
Next up, the Cal Golden Bears. Justin Wilcox taking over, or excuse me, not taking over.
Bears.
That's just how confused. Cal is Marshawn Lynch still playing there? Is Aaron Rodgers still there? Jared Goff?
What about Jared Goff? Yeah.
Jared Goff
That's
is a
the most
fluke.
perplexing thing to me of this whole deal. Like, Davis Webb was an NFL quarterback. Like, they have NFL players, and they are perpetually bad. Makes zero sense to me. This offense is putrid and not likely to get any better. Defense is actually pretty good. I really like Justin Wilcox as a coach. That's a pretty popular opinion. Not a whole lot to say here on the Cal Bears. This is a 6-6, 5-7 type of team. You know, maybe they squeak into a bowl game, maybe not. I just don't. I think you and I don't remember if you and I were having this conversation or not the other day. Like, do you really care if, I mean, outside of, I don't know what their number is, whatever their season total is, the Cal Golden Bears, do you care if they win 5 or 6 games? No. Unless you're betting the total, they're going to be towards the bottom, and they're going to lose a lot of games. So I mean, UC Davis, North Texas, at Ole Miss in the non-conference. Like, who cares? They're no good.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, I personally don't have much to say about this team. They did go to a bowl game last year for the first time since 2015. So that was.
Let me see what their win total
a
is.
step in the right direction.
Yeah, but I see. Like, I mean, what did they go to? The Emerald Nuts Bowl, like in their own home stadium. I mean, some of these things. It's just like, do these kids actually care about this stuff?
Jared, it's your favorite snack. It's a Cheez-It. It's a Cheez-It bowl.
Oh yeah. Well, then I probably would have been excited to go to those bowl games because I bet you those kids got some free Cheez-Its.
Oh yeah, boatload of Cheez-Its. Are you looking up win totals now, or are you wanting to?
Yeah, I'm looking up win totals. You
want me to keep stalling? Just kidding.
Stall. What's it by conference? Oh boy.
Yeah, good luck on that one.
Big Ten. The Pac-12 is in its rightful place at the bottom.
Well, I think we're starting
Cal
with
6. Yeah, Cal 6. Like, who cares? I mean,
it's a good number though.
Under minus 245. Holy smokes! That is insane.
And just when you think,
I had no piece of that.
And when you think there can't be a team that you care less about than you do about the Golden Bears, we come across the Oregon State Beavers, who, I mean, where do you even go with this team? 2-10 last year, absolutely obliterated by Minnesota on home turf, and then they fired their coach, I believe, the next week. No, it was a year. That was 2 years ago now. Whew. Anyway, Jonathan Smith.
Man, you really are getting old.
I'm losing it.
Who's Jonathan Smith? I still don't know who this guy is.
He was a quarterback at Oregon State from 98 to 2001. Prior head coaching experience, zilch, but I believe he was on the staff.
Prior?
Yes, prior.
Stanford, 6.5 wins, by the way.
Ooh.
Over. Blitz the over.
So, yeah, he was he set multiple records as quarterback.
I set tons of records.
He holds the number three spot.
Records.
Yeah. Number 3 there.
So many records.
I actually do like their quarterback. I remember watching him play. He's a big dude. Jake Luton, 6'7", 225.
Jake Luton. Is he a Minnesota boy?
He's going to be a guy that Pro Day is going to come around. He's going to have big hands, long arms. Yeah. He's going to be able to throw the ball 100 yards sitting on his butt. And
wingspan, 6'8".
Everyone's going to lose it.
Look out. Look at them. He's got all the throws.
Yeah. He can grip the football real good. I bet he can grip a clipboard really good, too.
Meanwhile, he's going to be swallowing his teeth for the next 14 weeks. Yeah. Just getting shoved in by this terrible conference.
They actually all their linemen are seniors.
Yeah, but that doesn't. See, I just don't. if you've been shit for 3 years, just because you're a senior, you're not magically going to be good. Like, you don't just get good overnight. Like, some of these things is just, I mean, I agree. Is it better to have a senior than a freshman? No question. But these guys are so outclassed talent-wise in the Pac-12, and that's saying something. Can you imagine if they had to play in like a real conference? Yeah, they're going to win a couple games. I think their total is 2. They got Oklahoma State to open the year. That's an L. Mullet coming in there, going to clean up the Tortilla Stadium with them. And then I wonder, are they still whatever stadium? Like, used to be like the Tortilla Stadium.
I have no idea.
Anyways.
Yeah.
At Hawaii, probably an L. They got Cal Poly at home. That should be a win. And then, just brutal. They get all their easy conference games are on the road.
Yeah, I think they're going to be dogs
Washington
in 11 of 12 games.
Yeah, should be. And their totals too. So, honestly, if I'm betting that, I'm betting the under.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because I think they're 1-1, and then you have some push scenarios where you're at least pushing.
Last year, they were outscored by 20 points per game, and they're at minus 132 yards per game differential.
Yeah, under 2 plus 205 on my what I'm looking at. I like that a lot. If you can find an under 2.5, even better. I just don't see it for these guys.
No cheating. How many wins would you guess this team has had in the past 4 years?
8.
Ooh, close.
7.
9.
Oh, I was gonna go the other way. I would have felt stupid then. Yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah.
And with college, unfortunately, unlike the NFL, you do not get first-round draft picks
when you
stink.
You don't even. You get worse players.
You get worse players. Well, and you think so, and that's the other thing too. So, in that little honey hole of the Pacific Northwest, you have Washington State, Oregon, and Washington, all who are just going to kick your butt in recruiting.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Well, we appreciate.
I don't see a path either.
I don't either. But that is going to do it. We apologize for we went a little over, Jay. We're at about the 48-minute mark. But we're
Whatever.
shaking the rust off.
We're shaking the dust off here. People love the hashtag content, all right?
Dust and rust are being shaken off. So, like Jared said, we're going to go college football. We're going to break it down conference by conference. We're not going to be releasing them out on, like, set dates, but just kind of going so when we can get together to record. So, the previews will be a little funky, but then once the season starts, we'll hit that rhythm, and you'll have your content on your, dates XYZ. Going to try and do a preview as well with Scott Panza. Obviously not doing college football with us, but will still be a part of the podcast and is still doing NFL with us after much fun times last year. So thank you for tuning in.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Plug for that. Scott and I will be in Vegas August 24th.
Ooh.
If you guys are out there for Super Contest Weekend, hit us up. We'll be getting registered for all our contests. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram. We got all the stuff now. Facebook.
Sure. We have a website.
We got all kinds of things. Trying to have a real podcast here.
Trying. Keyword. So thank you so much for listening.
Still trying.
Yeah. 3 years. And, I guess we're excited for year 3. Ball's still rolling. And we look forward to having you along for this journey. On that note, though, we are out of here.
See ya.